The same arrangement of figures is perpetually reproduced. The same actions, attitudes, faces, dresses. In Egypt, the modes of representation were so fixed that it was sacrilege to introduce a novelty. The Assyrian bas-reliefs display parallel characters, deities, kings, attendants, winged figures, and animals are, time after time, depicted in like positions, holding like implements, doing like things, and with like expression or non-expression of face. If a palm grove is introduced, all the trees are of the same height, have the same number of leaves, and are equidistant. When water is imitated, each wave is a counterpart of the rest, and the fish almost always of one kind are evenly distributed over the surface. The beards of the kings, the gods, and the winged figures are everywhere similar, as are the manes of the lions, and equally so those of the horses. Hair is represented throughout by one form of curl. The king's beard is quite architecturally built up of compound tiers of uniform curls, alternating with twisted tiers placed in a transverse direction and arranged with perfect regularity, and the terminal tufts of the bull's tails are represented in exactly the same manner, without tracing out analogous facts. In early Christian art, in which, though less striking, they are still visible, the advance in heterogeneity will be sufficiently manifest on remembering that in the pictures of our own days, the composition is endlessly varied. The attitudes, faces, expressions, unlike the subordinate objects, different in sizes, forms, textures, and more or less of contrast, even in the smallest details. Or, if we compare an Egyptian statue seated bolt upright on a block with hands on knees, fingers parallel, eyes looking straight forward, and the two sides perfectly symmetrical in every particular, with a statue of the advanced Greek school or the modern school, which is asymmetrical in respect of the attitude of the head, the body, the limbs, the arrangement of the hair, dress, appendages, and in its relations to neighboring objects. We shall see the change from the homogeneous to the heterogeneous clearly manifested in the coordinate origin and gradual differentiation of poetry, music, and dancing. We have another series of illustrations. Rhythm in words, rhythm in sounds, and rhythm in motions were in the beginning parts of the same thing, and have only in process of time become separate things among existing barbarous tribes. We find them still united. The dances of savages are accompanied by some kind of monotonous chant, the clapping of hands, the striking of rude instruments. There are measured movements, measured words, and measured tones. The early records of historic races similarly show these three forms of metrical action united in religious festivals. In the Hebrew writings, we read that the triumphal ode composed by Moses on the defeat of the Egyptians was sung to an accompaniment of dancing and timbrels. The Israelites danced and sung at the inauguration of the golden calf, and as it is generally agreed that this representation of the deity was borrowed from the mysteries of Apis. It is probable that the dancing was copied from that of the Egyptians on those occasions. Again, in Greece, the like relation is everywhere seen. The original type being there, as probably in other cases a simultaneous chanting and mimetic representation of the life and adventures of the hero or the god. The Spartan dances were accompanied by hymns and songs, and in general the Greeks had no festivals or religious assemblies, but what were accompanied with songs and dances, both of them being forms of worship used before altars among the Romans. 2. There were sacred dances, the Salian and Lupercalian being named as of that kind, and even in Christian countries as at Limoges in comparatively recent times, the people have danced in the choir in honor of a saint. The incipient separation of these once united arts from each other and from religion was early visible in Greece, probably diverging from dances partly religious, partly warlike, as the coronation came. The war dances proper, of which there were various kinds. Meanwhile, music and poetry, though still united, came to have an existence separate from dancing. The primitive Greek poems, religious in subject, were not recited but chanted, and though at first the chant of the poet was accompanied by the dance of the chorus, it ultimately grew into independence. Later still, when the poem had been differentiated into epic and lyric, when it became the custom to sing the lyric and recite the epic poetry proper, was born, as during the same period musical instruments were being multiplied. We may presume that music came to have an existence apart from words, and both of them were beginning to assume other forms besides the religious facts having like implications might be cited from the histories of later times and peoples as the practices of our own early minstrels who sang to the harp heroic narratives versified by themselves to music of their own composition, thus uniting the now separate offices of poet, composer, vocalist, and instrumentalist, but without further illustration, the common origin and gradual differentiation of dancing poetry and music will be sufficiently manifest. The advance from the homogeneous to the heterogeneous is displayed not only in the separation of these arts from each other and from religion, but also in the multiplied differentiations which each of them afterwards undergoes, not to dwell upon the numberless kinds of dancing that have in course of time come into use, and not to occupy space in detailing the progress of poetry as seen in the development of the various forms of meter, of rhyme, and of general organization. Let us confine our attention to music as a type of the group, as implied by the customs of still extant barbarous races. The first musical instruments were, without doubt, percussive sticks, calabashes, tom-toms, and were used simply to mark the time of the dance, and in this constant repetition of the same sound, we see music in its most homogeneous form. The Egyptians had a lyre with 3 strings. The early lyre of the Greeks had 4, constituting their tetrachord. In course of some centuries, lyres of 7 and 8 strings were employed, and by the expiration of 1,000 years, they had advanced to their great system of the double octave, through all which changes there of course arose a greater heterogeneity of melody. Simultaneously, there came into use the different modes: Dorian, Ionian, Phrygian, Aetolian, and Lydian, answering to our keys. And of these, there were ultimately 15. As yet, however, there was but little heterogeneity in the time of their music. Instrumental music being at first merely the accompaniment of vocal music, and vocal music being subordinated to words, the singer being also the poet, chanting his own compositions and making the lengths of his notes agree with the feet of his verses, there resulted a tiresome uniformity of measure, which, as Drive Bernie says, no resources of melody could disguise, lacking the complex rhythm obtained by our equal bars and unequal notes. The only rhythm was that produced by the quantity of the syllables, and was of necessity comparatively monotonous. And further, it may be observed that the chant thus resulting, being like recitative, was much less clearly differentiated from ordinary speech than is our modern song. Nevertheless, in virtue of the extended range of notes in use, the variety of modes, the occasional variations of time consequent on changes of meter, and the multiplication of instruments, music had towards the close of Greek civilization attained to considerable heterogeneity, not indeed as compared with our music, but as compared with that which preceded it. Still, there existed nothing but melody. Harmony was unknown. It was not until Christian church music had reached some development that music in parts was evolved, and then it came into existence through a very unobtrusive differentiation, difficult as it may be to conceive a priori. How the advance from melody to harmony could take place without a sudden leap. It is none the less true that it did. So, the circumstance which prepared the way for it was the employment of two choirs singing alternately the same air. Afterwards, it became the practice very possibly first suggested by a mistake for the second choir to commence before the first had ceased, thus producing a fugue with the simple airs then in use. A partially harmonious fugue might not improbably thus result, and a very partially harmonious fugue satisfied the ears of that age, as we know from still preserved examples. The idea having once been given, the composing of airs productive of fugal harmony would naturally grow up as in some way it did grow up out of this alternate choir singing, and from the fugue to concerted music of 2, 3, 4, and more parts. The transition was easy without pointing out in detail the increasing complexity that resulted from introducing notes of various lengths from the multiplication of keys, from the use of accidentals, from varieties of time, and so forth. It needs but to contrast music as it is with music as it was, to see how immense is the increase of heterogeneity. We see this if looking at music in its underscore ensemble underscore. We enumerate its many different genera and species if we consider the divisions into vocal, instrumental, and mixed, and their subdivisions into music for different voices and different instruments if we observe the many forms of sacred music, from the simple hymn, the chant, the canon, motet, anthem, C, up to the oratorio and the still more numerous forms of secular music, from the ballad up to the serenata, from the instrumental solo up to the symphony. Again, the same truth is seen on comparing any one sample of Aboriginal music with a sample of modern music, even an ordinary song for the piano, which we find to be relatively very heterogeneous, not only in respect of the variety in the pitches and in the lengths of the notes, the number of different notes sounding at the same instant in company with the voice and the variations of strength with which they are sounded and sung, but in respect of the changes of key, the changes of time, the changes of underscore timbre underscore of the voice, and the many other modifications of expression, while between the old monotonous dance chant and a grand opera of our own des, with its endless orchestral complexities and vocal combinations. The contrast in heterogeneity is so extreme that it seems scarcely credible that the one should have been the ancestor of the other. Were they needed many further illustrations might be cited, going back to the early time when the deeds of the God King were recorded in picture writings on the walls of temples and palaces, and so constituted a rude literature. We might trace the development of literature through phases in which, as in the Hebrew scriptures, it presents in one work theology, cosmogony, history, biography, law, ethics, poetry, down to its present heterogeneous development in which its separated divisions and subdivisions are so numerous and varied as to defy complete classification. Or we might trace out the evolution of science, beginning with the era in which it was not yet differentiated from art and was in union with art, the handmaid of religion, passing through the era in which the sciences were so few and rudimentary as to be simultaneously cultivated by the same men, and ending with the era in which the genera and species are so numerous that few can enumerate them, and no one can adequately grasp even one genus, or we might do the like with architecture, with the drama, with dress. But doubtless the reader is already weary of illustrations, and our promise has been amply fulfilled. Abundant proof has been given that the law of organic development formulated by von Baer is the law of all development. The advance from the simple to the complex through a process of successive differentiations is seen alike in the earliest changes of the universe to which we can reason our way back, and in the earliest changes which we can inductively establish, it is seen in the geologic and climatic evolution of the Earth. It is seen in the unfolding of every single organism on its surface, and in the multiplication of kinds of organisms. It is seen in the evolution of humanity, whether contemplated in the civilized individual or in the aggregate of races. It is seen in the evolution of society in respect alike of its political, its religious, and its economical organization, and it is seen in the evolution of all those endliness, concrete and abstract products of human activity which constitute the environment of our daily life. From the remotest past, which science can fathom, up to the novelties of yesterday, that in which progress essentially consists, is the transformation of the homogeneous into the heterogeneous, and now must not this uniformity of procedure be a consequence of some fundamental necessity? May we not rationally seek for some all-pervading principle which determines this all-pervading process of things? Does not the universality of the law imply a universal cause that we can comprehend such cause nominally considered is not to be supposed to do this would be to solve that ultimate mystery which must ever transcend human intelligence, but it still may be possible for us to reduce the law of all progress above set forth from the condition of an empirical generalization to the condition of a rational generalization, just as it was possible to interpret Kepler's laws as necessary consequences of the law of gravitation. So it may be possible to interpret this law of progress in its multiform manifestations as the necessary consequence of some similarly universal principle as gravitation was assignable as the underscore cause underscore of each of the groups of phenomena which Kepler generalized. So may some equally simple attribute of things be assignable as the cause of each of the groups of phenomena generalized in the foregoing pages. We may be able to affiliate all these varied evolutions of the homogeneous into the heterogeneous upon certain facts of immediate experience, which, in virtue of endless repetition, we regard as necessary. The probability of a common cause and the possibility of formulating it being granted, it will be well first to ask what must be the general characteristics of such cause, and in what direction we ought to look for it. We can with certainty predict that it has a high degree of abstractness, seeing that it is common to such infinitely varied phenomena. We need not expect to see in it an obvious solution of this or that form of progress, because it is equally concerned with forms of progress bearing little apparent resemblance to them. Its association with multiform orders of facts involves its dissociation from any particular order of facts, being that which determines progress of every kind: astronomic, geologic, organic, ethnologic, social, economic, artistic. It must be involved with some fundamental trait displayed in common by these, and must be expressible in terms of this fundamental trait. The only obvious respect in which all kinds of progress are alike is that they are modes of change and hence in some characteristic of changes in general, the desired solution will probably be found. We may suspect a priori that in some universal law of change lies the explanation of this universal transformation of the homogeneous into the heterogeneous. Thus much premised, we pass at once to the statement of the law, which is this: every active force produces more than one change. Every cause produces more than one effect. To make this proposition comprehensible, a few examples must be given. When one body strikes another, that which we usually regard as the effect is a change of position or motion in one or both bodies. But a moment's thought shows us that this is a very incomplete view of the matter. Besides the visible mechanical result, sound is produced, or, to speak accurately, a vibration in one or both bodies, which is communicated to the surrounding air, and under some circumstances we call this the effect. Moreover, the air has not only been made to undulate, but has had currents